Welcome. Message from the streets. Today's topic, interesting topic, controversial topic as usual. We're going to go right on into it. The relationship and the turbulence that the Democrat Party is having with the so-called black vote coming up in 2024. Some so-called blacks, they're going to vote Democrat regardless without doing any research, any crossing the T's and dotting the I's. They're just going to vote because they've been conditioned to do that. But there's a group or a segment of blacks that are contemplating to vote out of the best of their interests just on account of principle. And I'm saying they're thinking about voting for Donald Trump, and most blacks know, even though Donald Trump make all these promises and act like he's a friend to the so-called blacks, many so-called blacks already know that Donald Trump is a straight out so-called white nationalist. So what is the controversy? Why is the turbulence? It's because the Democratic Party do not respect so-called blacks or the black communities. The black community not looking for a whole lot, just our problems. And in one aspect, the Democratic Party, only thing they have to do is put two issues on the table. And that is an anti-hate crime bill to protect blacks from excessive force from the police and white nationalists, and for any other group or individual that want to get on the bandwagon and just attack so-called blacks for no apparent reasons. And since the Democratic Party, we got the protection for the LBGT, the protection from the Asian communities, and none of those communities have put in much work on the foundation and the building blocks of the so-called African American community. And some people will say, well, the African Americans or the so-called blacks, they wilding out here, they doing this and they doing that and they doing that. Yeah, why they doing that? Because European Caucasians systems had systematically created atmospheres and cultures that so-called blacks participate in. When you look at the all the violence and the drugs and all that stuff, blacks don't have no ships, no planes, no nothing. These things have been planted in black communities by the European, by the Caucasian, by the government. See what I'm saying? And now you ask why. But now the second thing that the Democrats fail to put on the table because they don't respect blacks is a reparation bill, some type of reparation for the slavery and the segregation and the terrorism, the domestic terrorism committed by so-called whites. That some might say, well, you wasn't there, but the whole thing is our forefathers was there, and they were stagnated. They were unable to produce in certain type of matters because they couldn't get jobs. They were ostracized for certain opportunities, certain schools. See, the so-called whites, only thing they're looking at is what's right here in front of their face and looking at their own selfish means to their own ends. They're not looking at the big picture. That's why they can't see the trauma that so-called blacks have been in, they're still in, and that we are behind the so-called whites, which many so-called whites consciously or unconsciously, they approve of this separation, and they don't care how did it happen. They don't care what's happening to attempt to make a resolution of it, but they're going to be against it because they feel like they're being slighted. But you won't acknowledge that people died in the fields. People were whipped. People were raped. People were separated from their families. People have experienced all types of psychological trauma because of white nationalist terrorism, a so-called melanated, so-called black, so-called Africans here in America. If we've been this diaspora. And again, I hear all the time, well, you wasn't there. You shouldn't be recipient of that. That's some European Caucasian sorcery. You see what I'm saying? Well, the Native Americans there, where the other people that receive compensation and is continue to receive compensation from the atrocities that they went through. United States, they've been paying, European Caucasian societies or cultures or people that have been slitted, forever and a day, and they still doing it. But when it comes to compensating so-called blacks, there's an issue. And it ain't all about just giving so-called blacks money. Money is a part of it, but education, job training. See what I'm saying? When I'm talking about education, up to a bachelor's degree in college, if you want more, you pay for it. We pay for it. See what I'm saying? Food stifling, housing stiflings. See what I'm saying? Subsidized housing, food stiflings, and a stifling monetary gain for the next 20 years, or not monetary gain, but monetary supplement for the next 20 years to those so-called blacks that qualify for the reparation. And it ain't hard. There's so many different things that you could do. You know, no taxes for 10 to 20 years. See what I'm saying? Help so-called blacks get where they supposed to be after being under the iron grip of terrorism, white nationalism, hatred, Jim Crow, redlining, gerrymandering, segregation, all these evils that you don't want to pay for. See what I'm saying? You don't want to pay, and all so-called whites that is in opposition to so-called blacks receiving some type of reconciliation for or reparations for the past tragedies, is because you hate so-called blacks and you had some type of hatred and disdainment within you, and you've been programmed and conditioned by the system. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just my point of view. Once again, the reason that so-called Democrats haven't been able to, lock down the so-called black votes, because the Democrats don't respect so-called blacks, and intelligent blacks, they see it. Not that we ain't talking about the boule and the bourgeoisies, those so-called Negroes. We're talking about intelligent blacks. They can see on the outside of the illusion of what's going on with these politics, with these hypocrites, these reptilians, and these serpent men. Take your picks, the Democrats or the Republicans. They think they slick. See what I'm saying? The blacks about to jump, so-called blacks about to jump out of the frying pan into the fire with the white nationalist party of the Republican Party, because the Democrats refuse to respect them. Joe Biden, you are a clown. Donald J. Trump, you are a clown. This whole judiciary, executive branch of the government, legislative branch of the government, full of charlatans, full of criminals, full of clowns, and that's why we in the United States is in the biggest circus in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is my point of view. This message was for entertainment purposes only. Do your research, come to your own conclusion, and don't believe a word I say. Oneness.